our stories really are us. They are our creation stories, they are our death stories, they are rebirth stories. They are so integral to who we are as people. Without oral tradition, native culture it just wouldn't be there the way it is.
Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday, ladies.
Happy Wednesday.
Great intro. Fabulous work.
Nail it every time.
Never mind. Let's quit.
Never. I think we're all kicking our feet and giggling a little bit because we have a special guest in the room. We are so excited to introduce Natalie Huber Rodriguez to the podcast. Natalie is a sociocultural anthropologist, folklorist, and proud member of the Taino Indian Nation of the Caribbean. Originally from the northeastern United States, she has spent the last 4.5 years working at the University of Glasgow in Glasgow, Scotland. Having spent most of her life studying Indigenous American folklore, she now practices as a traditional oral storyteller in Scotland, along with other local storytellers, where she shares various tribal tales of the native peoples and cultures from across the Americas. She is also the creator and host of the podcast Monstress, which discusses fearsome female beings of folklore, mythology, urban legends, history, and literature. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank you so much. So glad to be here.
Oh my gosh. We are so excited. Audience, this has been a long time coming. We have chatted with Natalie for ages, and we are now best friends, if I may be so bold to say. But she is so cool. You are so amazing, and we are so honored to have you here today to talk about your life as a storyteller and a creator and an academic.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so starstruck to be here right now because I think, as I said when I first contacted you guys in October, I've been listening to you for a while, and I was just like, oh my God, I miss having that camaraderie with my own fellow folklore academics back in the States. Obviously, it's been a bit difficult to transition with living here and everything, but I have made some friends and stuff now, which is amazing, especially within the storytelling and folklore and academic community. But always listening to you guys really just made me feel like so much at home and back in that world that I had mainly studied and worked in for so long. And I'm such a big fan of your show still, and you're all so inspiring and definitely played a role in inspiration for my own show. So I am so honored to be here and that you would want to have me on the show. And I am just thrilled to see you guys all in person again, or sort of in person.
Oh my God, we wish.
Our version of in person for now.
We'll be in Scotland
know,
soon.
right?
We'll be traveling to you. Don't worry.
Yes.
Ladies
please. More than welcome anytime.
How was it moving from the States to Scotland? That must have been a hard transition.
Yeah, so I mean, that whole story is just kind of funny in of itself. So originally I had been offered the position. It was kind of like a study and work abroad program for the University of Glasgow. And it was right around COVID, and everybody was just kind of restless and maybe wanting a change and wanting something different. And I had been at my job for quite a while at that point, where I was at George Washington University in DC. My father had just recently passed away very suddenly, and I was kind of just in a funk, and I felt like I needed something new. I needed a change. And originally the program was actually supposed to start in the fall 2020 year, but because COVID was still going on, obviously it was delayed, deferred, because they were like, oh, everything was just going to be online, so there's really no point in you coming, unless you still want to. And I'm like, no, I'm obviously
the whole point.
Yeah, exactly. So, I was disappointed, but I was like, right, okay, that's fine. I'll do another year here. I'm still working remotely, etc., with helping kind of take care of my mom and everything after my father passed away. And so then in fall of 2021, I came, and I was only supposed to be here for that academic year. I was teaching and also getting an additional master's degree in creative writing, literature, and letters at the university while doing some lecturing and stuff. But as fate would have it, maybe, again, it's good that my program got deferred, because I did meet the guy who is now my husband, who is yeah, I know. Totally lame cliche love story, but
literally living a rom-com.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
Truly, yeah. God, that's why I say I was like, beware of these guys with their kilts and their accents, their brogues.
Oh
he,
my
he was not wearing a kilt when I met him. I'll just say that. But yeah, I met him literally within like my first week here. Funny enough, just like randomly out at a pub, an Irish pub. He's half Irish, half Scottish, and I was like immediately, of course, no, not getting into this. I'm only here for a year. This is not a time for getting into real long-term relationship.
Famous
And
last
I was very
words.
upfront about that. Yeah, I know, right? As I said, famous last words. And I was like very upfront with him about that. Here we are. Here I am nearly 5 years later with this ring, still in Scotland. And I am very happy, obviously. I've met the love of my life and it's great. But it was a really like hard transition. Obviously, meeting him like made things different, a little better. You have somebody to talk to. You have a social network and everything through them, I suppose, at least. But once I realized I was going to be here for kind of longer than anticipated, it was a bit like isolating in a lot of ways. Just even like I said, listening to you guys, the kind of like the way I talk or something, or the way that they talk over here, like I feel like some jokes don't translate right, or they're not getting references I'm saying, and vice versa,
Yeah.
And so that was like a big thing for me. And obviously another big thing was like understanding some people.
Yeah.
The accents
Sure.
vary. Yeah, the accents vary greatly, but some are harder than others. I like to think I'm much better at it now because I end up translating for my family a lot when they listen to him. They're like, wait, what is he saying? Or I have to say what an expression means. He said, I wish means be quiet. Or achai is like, oh, right. A wee and boil your head is more like, kind of like, I guess, fuck off, basically.
I love
If
it.
I
Use that
can say that,
one.
edit it out if you have to.
Is it weird if we use these in Southern California or?
I mean, go for it. People might think it is kind of
Yeah.
but have at it. Have
Okay,
at
heard,
it.
heard.
Spread Scots everywhere. So yeah, so that was an adjustment. Other big adjustment was the weather. You guys in Southern California, you don't know how good you have it.
We've been
um,
told.
yeah, it is here. It is quite rainy. It is quite windy as well because we are up in further northern part of the UK. We get a lot of wind off the ocean. The rain and the cloudiness definitely during the winter, especially when it gets dark at 3 p.m. and definitely takes a toll on you. And then you really understand why everybody drinks all.
But a great place for sitting around and telling stories, it sounds like. That's all
Exactly,
great
Yes,
to
and
it
that
hear.
is
is.
it's absolutely true. So many people spend their time obviously indoors in like preferably a cozy, warmer area, gathered together and through things like storytelling, drinking, or just like being together. That is where a lot of the storytelling lore, I guess, and storytelling traditions from this part of the world really come from. Stories around the hearth from in both like Scotland and Ireland, because when there was literally nothing better to do because it's pissing rain outside all the time and you just are stuck inside for long periods of time with people, that's kind of how you entertain yourself. So as difficult as that was for me, especially being such an outdoorsy person as I was, like seriously, my mother's from Cuba, like my family lives in Florida. I was like, this
Yeah.
is like the
Yeah.
exact opposite of
That's different.
Just a bit.
yeah. So it was different in a lot of ways from what I was used to, but I really did find my niche and my crowd in like the academic, particularly the literary based and kind of storytelling academic and historical and folkloric kind of community, of which there is a very big tradition here. Like I said, at the university, we have a whole program for Celtic and Gaelic studies, which is great. In Edinburgh, which is very close, it's only 50 minutes by train, we have the Scottish Storytelling Centre, which is an amazing place. It's basically a whole museum dedicated to oral traditions and folk traditions and stories from various cultures all over the world. Like obviously a lot of it comes from Scotland and this part of the world, but they bring in guests from everywhere. Like they've had people from even indigenous tribes come in as well. And they do events all the time. Edinburgh is a very artsy, very historical city, very academic city as well. So they really place a lot of value in those traditions. And that's why the Storytelling Center does exist and that they are always doing these events. We recently just celebrated, because it was in line with St. Patrick's Day or Paddy's Day. Jack will correct me if the way I say that.
Heard.
But Paddy's Day coincides with what we call Gaelic and Gaelic Week. It's the sort of celebrating and embracing of the traditional language of Scotland and Ireland, which is I mean, they're slightly different dialects, but they both come from the ancient Celtic Gaelic language. Both of these languages were lost for a very long time during English colonization of both areas, something I can very much relate to as an Indigenous person because the same thing did happen to us. And sadly, a lot of the languages have become more or less extinct due to that. But what Ireland in particular was able to do, and Scotland to some degree, was to kind of resurrect those languages after nearly like 700 years,
Wow.
and standardize them to the Latin alphabet because they had no written form before. And now
Whoa.
in Ireland, yeah, and even come up with new words and new vocabulary because obviously things like text and email didn't exist.
No.
You know, they came up with all of that, and now it is a full-fledged language, and it is the national language of Ireland, and everybody who lives and goes to school in Ireland has to take it as a mandatory subject along with
Wow.
math, English, etc., up through high school. So they all technically have to learn it. Not a lot of them really use it afterwards, obviously, but like my husband took it, all his siblings, because they grew up in Ireland, all had to study it and they remember some of it. And if you go to Ireland, which I highly recommend, you will see like the street signs and everything will be in Irish and then in English. And you're really seeing
That's
like
so
a piece
amazing.
of that history. Yeah. And Scotland, to some
Oh,
degree, they've
wow.
got some Gaelic speaking schools and Gaelic teachers as well. And like I said, in the university, we've got the Celtic and Gaelic studies section, which does include teaching the Gaelic language. And so when we did like this whole Gaelic celebrations week, it was all about the traditions of Gaelic culture in both Scotland and Ireland and in other parts of the diaspora around the world. And even hearing stories like told in those languages, obviously, I don't understand it. I don't speak it. I know some words from having heard it from my husband and from around here and from watching certain shows. But I do think language is such an important part of culture, and there is so much context that gets lost from certain stories when they are translated outside their original language, concepts that maybe just don't translate or don't exist. So even though like they obviously they told the versions in the original Gaelic languages and then translated it into English, or some people who couldn't had like a little pamphlet that you could read from as you were listening. But to just hear that in the original language that it was likely first told in, like back before there was written language, was something amazing. And again, as an Indigenous storyteller, hearing that among my own tribal community and other tribal communities, it's the same thing. It evokes those same feelings. I'm like, this is how it was literally originally told,
Wow.
in its own original context. And the fact that we're still able to do that despite all the changes and everything that these cultures have gone through, and despite these languages being more or less lost for so long, like the fact that the people can still preserve them and still tell the stories in them is something like very just moving and
Yeah.
very fascinating at the same time.
Magical.
I feel like even if
Yeah.
I didn't understand what they were saying, I feel like just hearing it in the original language would be so moving and emotional, like
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Wow.
And you can see it, like the one woman who can speak Irish, you can see it in her face as she tell, like, you almost can understand it without really understand, obviously
Yeah.
not the specific details, but,
Yeah.
But the feeling.
The emotion.
The
Yeah.
emotional
yeah,
beats. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
exactly.
It sounds like you've had like a through line of storytelling through your whole life. And I wonder if you could take us back a little bit to what role storytelling and that culture played for you growing up.
Sure, yeah. So, as I think I mentioned, my mom was an immigrant from Cuba, and she is of Taino native descent. Taino are the indigenous people of the Caribbean and South Florida. And so our descendants are spread throughout Cuba, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, even Haiti and Jamaica to some degree. So when her family first immigrated, obviously learning English was a big thing, and it was very difficult. And my mom and her siblings were able to because they went to school. But for the older people, it was a lot harder because you weren't getting that same kind of immersion. And a lot of the time they were living within communities of other people who spoke Spanish and their original languages as well. So there wasn't really a whole lot of opportunity to learn it as much. And obviously, again, they couldn't read and write in English either. And when you immigrate, especially when you immigrate like that way, they were fleeing basically, believe it or not, they came pre-revolution. So that was back before Castro. That was when things
Wow.
were under Fulgencio Batista, which was even more, believe it or not, worse than they are now in Cuba. I mean, that was a very totalitarian dictatorship. And so my family was poor. They fled that. And there was really not much they could bring with them from their old life. They left people behind. They left photographs, even a lot of personal effects, things that were all very meaningful part of their lives. But when you leave in that way, you can really only take with you what you can carry on your back, kind of thing. So for my family, for that side in particular, I think their stories and telling their stories were their ways to maintain their connection to home, to the life they knew before, to the people they knew before, especially. And that's came into play a lot as well with our indigenous heritage too, because obviously that even predates the time of when they were immigrating and everything. That goes way, way back. And for our tribe, it's particularly important because we were incorrectly believed to be extinct for a lot of the time. They thought it was in like all the books and all the academics, and everyone said, oh, the Taino died out, the Europeans came, killed all of them off. And I remember even hearing that in school, like in class when I was in seventh grade or so. And it was like in one of my history classes, and I was very shocked. I was like, wait, no, we didn't. My grandmother is one. Like, and
Yes.
her mother is almost like full blooded. I mean, a lot of us are, like myself, like my mother, very admixed because that is how we survived. We intermarried with other populations, Spanish, African, everything. But I said, but that doesn't constitute extinction. So much of our culture, we know who we are. We have known who we are.
Wow.
And so I remember being a bit like, what? And I remember going home and asking my mom about it, and her like directing me to like my older relatives, like my great aunt especially was big kind of culture keeper and storyteller of our family. She knew all our history. She read a lot, so she knew everything. And she was like, "Oh yeah, that's a myth. First of all, they committed a real genocide against us, and then they committed what we call a paper genocide against us by trying to say we don't exist anymore. We're gone. They wrote us out of the books and everything." And it's really only in relatively recent years, and when I say like within my lifetime, past 20 years or so, that the Taino community in the U.S., and particularly among a lot of the Puerto Rican immigrants, have really kind of revitalized and reasserted our identity and have been putting ourselves like on the stage with other indigenous groups saying, hey, no, we're here too, and we've been around and
Aw.
we're not extinct.
Wow.
And you
Yeah.
can see we're not extinct because we're right here. And
It's doubly insulting that
Yeah.
yeah,
history books are
Yeah.
like,
and
no.
exactly. And it's not even just through like self assertion. They have done like DNA tests and genetic studies on the modern day populations of Cuba, Puerto Rico, DR, and they have found that pretty much all of us have, to some degree, some varying, some more so than others, indigenous heritage within us. And so it's not just like we're just saying it or we're just remembering it.
Yeah.
It is tangible. It is in our blood. It's there.
Very much alive. Yeah.
It's the same for many other Latin American countries as well. Like a lot of us are what we call mestizo populations, which are means mixed indigenous and Spanish. And again, some countries like ours who had African slaves brought through have that to some degree as well. So almost like even a triracial group, triracial population to some degree.
Yeah.
So for me in particular, having that background on my mother's side, storytelling was really everything for us. I learned everything from that side of the family and our history and heritage through stories told by my grandmother, by my aunts, mainly women in my family, the great aunts and cousins, elder women mostly, and usually in the house, around the kitchen, or while cooking, while baking, while sewing. And that's something that I find is very common in a lot of not just indigenous culture, but worldwide, is that it is the women who sort of tend to be the kind of keepers of these stories because they were the ones who were watching children most of the time, at least when children were young. So therefore, they were spending the most time with them and they were passing the stories to them. And then the children, when they grew up, could pass them to their children, et cetera, et cetera. So women's role in storytelling and carrying culture and keeping culture and passing traditions is so essential and so vital. And I feel like it gets overlooked a lot of the time because everyone's like, obviously most societies have been historically patriarchal and
Yeah.
we go by, what the men were doing. But the ones who were, even if they were just at home cooking, baking, cleaning, watching kids, yes, they were doing all that, which, I mean, we shouldn't sniff at
That's
either. I
work.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a big job.
Yeah.
But while they were doing that, they were also the first kind of teachers, really, of our cultures, of our traditions, and the first storytellers. First stories we ever hear usually come from our mothers or female relative, whoever is kind of like spending the most time with us as small children, but be it for entertainment purposes or to teach us things, teach us lessons. And it's usually, I mean, obviously this isn't true for everyone, but it is usually women. Women are the caretakers in a lot of this. Um, so I always just found that really fascinating. And as I grew up and became like an academic, I really wanted to shine more light on that, on like women's role in carrying these stories and carrying our traditions and carrying our cultures. And it is very recognized in the indigenous communities that women do have that kind of special power, and it's almost like something sacred in that way that women do that. I'm part of an indigenous women's group called We Carry It Forward, because that is what it is. We are carrying culture and tradition forward before anybody else does, and that role is quite recognized. It's less so recognized, at least traditionally wasn't as recognized in more like European Western cultures. It was, I think, understood, but maybe not as valued. I'm loving, obviously, now within even this last century, women coming into being able to finally come into academic roles, being able to study, being able to teach, can show what we've been doing all along, right? Like we've been doing this for thousands and thousands of years. Just nobody's really,
Yeah.
we haven't done it in like a public or academic or professional setting. But now that we can do that and are able to show what we can do and have been doing, it's like this amazing new world of how we can tell our stories. Our audience is so much bigger now. We don't have to just tell them to the kids that we're watching or
Yeah.
younger siblings, etc. We can really spread it. And I always really was so grateful for that, because obviously my older relatives on my mother's side, they were literate but very minimally. They had very minimal schooling in Cuba. They could read and write very basically in their own language, obviously not English. So everything that they translated was all just through spoken word and stories that I was hearing and then I was passing on and making records of. And even though like people would look at that and say, oh, well, what really is the value in that if they're just talking around the kitchen? I'm like, there is so much value in that.
Incredibly
Regardless of
so.
my grandmother not
This,
having even finished elementary school or anything, like she is
yeah,
an
Yeah.
integral part of keeping my culture and of keeping not only the
Yeah.
history of
yeah.
our country, our people, and all of that, but our family in particular. We have so many just like inner family stories of people who I have never known because they were left behind when they
Right.
immigrated, or they've died now, but now I know them and I know all of that through them. And so to me, that's probably when I first started recognizing the value in oral tradition and in storytelling.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially if you're in
Definitely.
school and you're hearing that your people, quote unquote, don't exist. The
That's
storytelling that's told
yeah,
around
crazy.
the table is so much more powerful. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
persevering.
it was quite, that was such a jarring experience. I still remember it
I
to this
can't
day, and
imagine.
I was just like, I didn't even want to ask my teacher because I'm like, am I gonna like sound crazy or look crazy? Like,
Aw.
Oh.
No.
and so that's really where it first started for me. And even my grandmother, now she's 94, God bless her. Um,
Mhm.
and she obviously forgets things day to day. She'll repeat questions, ask who somebody is who she hasn't met. And, that's typical of it. But then when you ask her something from 60 years ago back in Cuba, she'll tell you the whole story, like word for word, detail for detail, and can remember that
That's
perfectly.
Written on
Because
her
I
incredible.
heart.
remember her
Yeah.
I know. I remember her telling it's actually one of my favorite funny stories. It was about in Cuba, like you're not allowed to kill cattle for meat because they're so rare. They all have to be reserved for milk.
Oh,
So red meat is considered like red gold. And it was my grandmother's great aunt, some distant relative, this little 5 foot woman. They had a dairy cow that died, and technically you're supposed to report that, and the government comes and takes the meat from you, but she was like, no, I really need to feed my family. So I'm sorry, the dairy cow didn't die. It stopped giving milk. So while her kids were at school, this little 5 foot nothing 100-pound woman hauled this giant cow into her bathroom and managed to slaughter it and butcher it and get it all done and cleaned up and everything by the time her husband
Oh
and
my
children got home.
gosh.
Yeah,
badass.
and then
Women
obviously
get
the
stuff
kids come
done.
home. I know. And when I'm thinking of that, I'm like, I've seen pictures of Tia Lucia, and I'm like, Tia Lucia was this yeah, like this tiny little nothing of a
Oh,
woman, and the thought of her just somehow hauling a giant cow
That's so
into pushing it
good.
into the bathroom of her home. I guess because that way you could clean the blood and everything easily,
yeah.
I feel like it's
and
that thing where
slaughtering
like
and butchering it.
women can lift up a car if their child is under. She's like,
Yes.
I have to feed
Yeah,
my family. I'm getting
exactly.
this cow in the bathroom.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Exactly. Like it's one of my favorite stories, and it's just so crazy to me to picture it. But my grandmother can still remember it word for word, and she swears up and down because she goes, "Oh, and they ate like kings for weeks because they had so much meat now, and we were all jealous." And
Oh,
everybody kept wondering and asking them, "How did they get all this meat?" And I think she made up some story of how, "Oh, the cow died, yeah, and I tried to call, but they couldn't get here in time, and it was going to spoil, so she made up
you're
some
like,
whole
get your story
like
straight.
thing." Yeah, exactly, because it really is a crime over there. You
Yeah.
could be like
Wow.
go to prison
Wow.
for it. And but then when it came out how she actually did, I guess we told it many years later, or it got passed down after somebody had left the country and they weren't in danger of it
Right.
anymore, or she was dead. And I heard about that, and I was just like, oh my god, it's such a funny, crazy story. And my grandmother and her sisters, my great aunts and uncles and everything, they all confirmed. They're like, oh yeah, we remember that. That was big news in our town, like, or in
That's
our
pretty
family. We all
That's
incredible.
know.
awesome.
I have to
Yeah.
say, do you know the theory of like biology? I guess a lot of biologists are putting it forward that menopause actually seems to happen in certain animals so that those matriarchs or women can go on and teach and not just pass down stories, but literally teach. So, like orca whales, menopause only happens in a
Mhm.
couple animals, but in orca whales, it is the menopausal females that actually, or postmenopausal females, that end up teaching the younger ones how to hunt and survive in the wild. It's crazy.
Oh
I'm
wow,
just
I
putting
heard
that
that with
forward.
elephants,
I think
or
elephant is
something
the same
similar with
thing.
elephants.
Yeah, I
That
think
makes
there are
Yeah.
sense.
only like a couple species that have menopause, but it seems like the reason, or again, like some people theorize that the reason is
Yeah.
because those females end up teaching the entire group and can't be tied
Right.
Whoa.
down
Well,
by
they're
one
not. I guess
baby.
they're
Wow.
not preoccupied with
Yeah.
having their own children
They're like,
Yeah,
we
anymore.
have time
literally.
Yeah.
now.
Wait,
Yeah.
that's so
Right.
cool. I feel like
You think you're getting a break, but you're not. You actually now you've got other
Yeah.
kids to
now
work
you
with.
must teach
Everyone's your
everyone.
child. Yeah.
Yes.
God,
Yes.
women
Now
never
you
get a
are a
break.
grandmother.
Yeah.
No, I know, right? Now you're a grandmother. Now grandma has to take care of kids.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep,
the
yep.
orca whale was like, what happened to retirement?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's like,
They're
I
like,
like
Right.
not for
swim.
you.
We really never get a break, do we?
Wow.
I just wondered if you could share with us some of the hallmarks of the indigenous storytelling you grew up with
Oh,
and the
sure.
story types and things like that.
Basically, a lot of them, we always like to tell origin stories. We like to know where we came from, who we are, how we got here, how our people came to be. And usually that also involves like stories of like how the earth itself came to be, the natural features around us, who the spirits, beings, whoever started it first, and either by accident or by some crazy coincidence, some things happen, and now there's us and why we were created. Because I think it's really important. We always like to recognize our place in the bigger picture, which is different from Western Eurocentric kind of view.
Yeah.
People always think, oh, people are on top and then there's animals and blah, blah, blah. Whereas Indigenous storytelling always puts us in the context of the greater world that we are just one part of, with plants, with animals, with the earth around us, and how it's all contributed to us being here, and we are no more important than any of the others. So those always are big ones, and everybody likes them. We also love to tell trickster stories, which are my favorites too. We've got a lot of great tricksters throughout Indigenous folklore. Coyote is one of my favorites, and you see him in the Southwest, throughout the Great Plains. In the Pacific Northwestern tribes, you have Raven, equally entertaining. Throughout all different tribes, there's the hero twins, who are tricksters slash heroes of Diné Navajo people as well as Mayan people. We have Yukahu in Taino lore, who is our hero slash trickster, because they're kind of these odd figures a lot of the times. They're not heroes per se, but they do heroic things sometimes, and a lot of the times they are the reasons that we as people have what we have, or why things are the way they are. And they use like their trickery to, again, sort of like Jack, he's like a modern of that, outwit bigger, more powerful opponents through wit and cleverness. But they're also important figures for teaching children like lessons against like immoral or deviant behavior as well. And so those I think are really like essential, particularly when it comes to sharing culture and sharing we do things this way because
Sure.
and a lot of like native storytelling has like why certain rituals started as well. We do this because this was first done by this particular ancestor, the spirit, to do this because they made this agreement or something with the spirits. And now we all have to do that from now on to continue to maintain that connection. So for us, like in the Taino tradition, it's like offering some sort of water a lot of the time. Tobacco, especially, is very sacred in a lot of native circles. You offer tobacco because it was considered a sacred plant, and it still is. It's been obviously commodified by the European and Western world now, but it was considered one of those things that was like essential to maintaining a connection with the greater spiritual world as people. And also, we like to tell stories of that sometimes are just making sense of some things, like why is thunder a thing? Because there's a thunderbird up there, and and he's
Oh,
flapping
I
his
love
wings and making the
that.
wind come. Yeah,
Oh,
and
cool.
people may say, oh yeah, thunderstorms and the wind is annoying sometimes, but it's essential because it keeps the rivers moving and the water moving, blows pollination around for crops and stuff. So because there's a whole story about a boy who's annoyed because the thunderbird keeps making his canoe blow back because of the wind when he's trying to go fishing, and he goes and hits it or gets it, injures it somehow, and then it can't do that, and then the water becomes stagnant and everything gets really screwed up, and then he's got to go be like, oh no, see what did I do, and go fix it.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
That's awesome.
so yeah, so that's like a good. So again, it's a lot of like myth making, I suppose, in its purest form. Original form was kind of sense making of the
Yeah.
natural world, right, and things around us, natural phenomenon, things that happened, because we were people, all people at one point were so dependent on nature, right?
Yeah.
We were dependent on getting things right, planting at the right time, hunting at the right time, knowing when it was going to be hot or cold or a storm was coming or not. So to try to understand that, we had to, I think, make these stories and pass them down to carry on that knowledge of why this is how it is and this is what we have to do to survive it or to continue to make the most of it, I suppose, in certain times. And with native lore, like I said, there's always a very personal connection. There's stories that are in tribes, but then there's stories even that are specific to clans or to families. You could even call my great aunt and the cow story maybe one. It's not a traditional native story, but it's just a funny story for our family, and really establishing that like a community greater than yourself. So there is a much more personal connection to it. It was particularly during the times of colonization when, our language was taken, our culture was taken, everything really was taken. Our stories were really all that we had to some degree. But that was the one thing that could not be taken. That was the one thing we could continue. And that was the one way a lot of the time we were able to maintain this connection to who we were prior to colonization and prior to losing everything that kind of made us who we were in a lot of senses. It was a way to keep our history, to remember who we were, to remember where we came from. And to this day, obviously, things have changed greatly. We're not oppressed the same way we were then, but because we were for so long, we still have lost so much. And using our stories really, they are us, all of our, like I said, all our relations. And without them, we would not be. They are, like I said, they are our creation stories, they are our death stories, they are rebirth stories. They are so integral to who we are as people. Without oral tradition, native culture it just wouldn't be there the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Thank you for sharing all that.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the
Um,
Thunderbird story.
I know that it is a funny one too.
I love it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like some native stories are quite funny and quite amusing. So everyone was always very heavy. I'm like, no, we've got plenty of just stories that are just
Yeah,
fun and
fun.
funny. Yeah, they have a greater meaning sometimes, but sometimes they're just entertaining
Yeah.
and silly. And again, the way you tell them obviously has a lot of impact on that too. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's such a crucial part of pretty much any indigenous person's identity, and I think that's beyond just indigenous Americas too. I think it's anybody who comes from like an indigenous culture that especially suffered colonization and suffered having a lot of their culture taken from them forcibly and oppressed and suppressed for so long, and then all you have left are your stories. That is the way you maintain your connection. Because like I said, I
Right.
was hearing that even during Gaelic week with the Irish speakers.
Yeah.
um, I've heard it from indigenous people from Africa, from
Mm.
Australia, the Sami people in Scandinavia. Like, oral tradition is a huge part of all of those cultures, and I think that's what it is. Like, obviously it was important before, but it became so much more important after colonization.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, makes a lot
definitely.
of sense.
Yeah.
So in your family, was there a certain moment that you were like, I am being passed down as the storyteller and taking over that role? Or did it just sort of happen?
It happened like kind of organically, I want to say, because I remember, obviously, I was close to my father's side as well, and I had a lot of good stories from them too. But the difference was they had written records of a lot of things, of family members, of their family tree, of birth certificates, all that. Like, my mom's side had none of that. Like, that all kind of had to be pieced together. And it really started with me kind of wanting to piece together our history, because my mom, obviously, they were the first ones to immigrate, and we lost so much in that immigration, at least, like, tangible documents of
Right.
things we had. So I really was like, well, I feel like we should have something to keep and to show later on, something that can survive, like, even after people who tell these stories maybe have passed away or something. And I think also just being from this kind of like blend of two very different cultures between my parents, I became more aware of like cultural differences and cultural nuances between people and groups of people, communities. I'm like, wow, the way mom's family interacts, or the way even I interact with them, is so different than how I would interact with my dad's side of the family. And even just the way they look at their own history and everything and their own culture is so different as well. So I decided, like, first I started with piecing together my mom's family tree and everything, and tracing us back, collecting documents and stuff that I could find through records, which again was really hard to do, if because I'd have to go in and try to get them from Cuba, and
Gosh.
from other
Wow.
places. There were some people who came from like Venezuela, Mexico, even further back. So using like certain like databases like Ancestry and stuff, I was able to piece together some of that. And even I worked at National Geographic for a little bit, and we did this project called the Genome Project, which was all about kind of tracing a bit more distant ancestry, if you could, through genetics. And I found that very fascinating as well. So I combined that in with what I was already doing myself. And when I was working at Nat Geo, they said we need a bigger reference population. So anybody who wants to give their DNA sample or wants to be part of this project, you're more than welcome. And especially
Wow.
for the employees, it was free. It was all part of this project.
Huge.
So I was like, yeah, happy to do that. Um, so I guess that's when it really started for me. Was it started very personally, like really wanting to kind of remember and bring back the stories from my family that had been lost,
Mhm.
or fill in the missing pieces of our journey and of our history. And then just really enjoying it so much that I'm like, oh, this is so great to do for my family in particular, but I like reading other people's stories too. Like, nosy as I am, I like when like whenever I yeah, exactly. It's like, ooh, what happened here? Who did that? Who did what then? Like, I'll tell you, like, if the story about my Aunt Lucia killing the cow had come from somebody else, I would find it just as fascinating. Like, if one of my friends had
And
told me,
confirm.
oh
Yeah.
my God, this, yeah. Like, if someone said, oh my God, you'll never believe what happened in my family, I'd be like, that's awesome. And you should remember that and record that somewhere.
Yeah.
And
I do that to my
so,
boyfriend on Ancestry.com all the time. I
oh
like
yeah, you
try and
tell him,
do
you're
his
like, oh, by
ancestry,
the
and I'm like,
way,
isn't it crazy that this person came from here? And he's like, I guess. I'm like, okay, got it.
some people just don't get it,
They don't get
like
it.
you always, like,
Curious.
yeah. They won't get. And you're like, this is your family and your
Yeah.
great whoever did this crazy thing, and you
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
care.
How do you not think that's interesting?
It's like you sit down with your girlfriends and you're like, what's the tea? And everyone has something. But then you sit down with your guy
Exactly.
friends,
Yeah.
you're like, what's the tea? They're like,
Huh?
what do you mean?
I know, right? That's
Sports?
such a big concept over here. Ooh, I have some tea to spill. That's what the girls always say. Ooh, I've got some tea to spill.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like maybe that is part of us being women, and we love a gossip, and we love.
It's just
we
storytelling,
just
It
isn't
love.
it? We
is.
love
Yeah, it is.
information.
It's exactly. It's information, and obviously we have our own, but it's always good to know what's going on with other
Yeah.
people. Maybe people who have people we're close to,
Hmm.
particularly like family, friends. We want to know what's going on in their lives,
Yeah,
in their history. I think that's part of why we love social media so much these days,
totally.
right? Like
I was gonna ask
we
about
love like
that.
going. Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's what it social media we could almost is basically storytelling in a different form, a modern digital storytelling, and we find ourselves really fascinated and drawn to it, right? We want it like whenever we see, oh, somebody's doing this, what? Like
Yeah.
and you love it and you're fascinated by it and you want to know more, whether it's because you're just curious or just you say things are boring in my own life at the moment, what's going on with you? But that's I get like, and my dad used to always joke with me about it. He's yeah, you're just like I think you're just nosy and you just want to know everybody's deal all the
No,
time.
no,
Even
Dad.
I know. I was
Yes, I
like,
do.
Dad, look, yeah, I mean I do, but
Yes,
he's
and
like I'm like a lot of these people are like oh, I'm looking ancient people and ancient
Yeah.
cultures, people who are dead. He's like, yeah, and you're so nosy, you want to know all about them too. Like,
That is a hilarious take on that. But
that's
like,
really
not
I
funny.
know.
no.
Not
But
no.
women are the backbone of society, and that is why we still have society, is because we are curious.
Exactly. We like information and
Life is
we
interesting. Like,
right. We learn, we keep, and we spread information.
yeah.
Exactly. Have you noticed
And
in your studies, because I know obviously you focus on like more women's stories and storytelling and everything. Have you
yeah.
noticed a,
Oh, I do everything. I mean, like I'm really brainly coming into the women thing now, but
oh,
like I've
cool. You do
yeah,
everything.
I
Well,
do
have you noticed a
I do
difference
male stories.
between stories that are told like by
Mm.
women and stories that are told by men? Do they focus on different
Absolutely.
things? What are the
Yes.
differences?
I find female storytellers and the stories they tell to be much more personal, much more emotionally connected, whereas I think a lot of the male storytell and again, there's obviously nuance and
Of
variation to
Right.
all
course.
of this. But a lot of male storytellers tend to go for hero stories, like the archetypal hero who did this and did that and accomplished this great feat, overcame this, which are great. I love those too.
Yeah.
Those are always fun to hear. War stories, a lot,
Sure.
of course. Men love to talk about great battles and war and accomplishments through that. I find tend to be big themes with male storytellers, whereas female storytellers a lot of the time tend to be love stories, which everybody loves a good love story. And then also things involving kind of family life as well, maybe like a child who was disobedient and this happened, or like a lot of the one of the big like characters here, both not just here in all of UK folklore and stories, is Jack or Jock as he's known in Scotland, Jack the Lad as he's called, my husband's name, funny enough.
Jack the
And
lad.
we've all yes, Jack the Lad. His family does call him that
Aw.
sometimes. And if we all know of Jack's stories, we've all probably heard one. We've all heard of Jack and the Beanstalk. We've all heard of Jack and the Giant. Jack is always, he's that archetypal kind of like everyman, usually a young boy who goes off, he's not like, he's not super smart, but he's not like book smart, but he's clever.
Yeah.
He's not super hardworking. He can figure things out. He ends up being sort of he can trick like bigger, more dangerous opponents and do things. So he's kind of like he's meant to be like that character everyone can relate to. I hear Jack's stories all the time because they're so big over here. And when the men tell them, it's usually ones like Jack and the Giant Slayer, Jack stole the golden goose, that like Jack basically going out in the world, accomplishing some great feat, even though he's like traditionally an underdog and he manages through like cleverness and trickery to be able to outwit his opponent, get rich, do whatever he has to do. And then when the women tell them, they often involve Jack because Jack also traditionally and in most of the archetypes has a mother, a single mother, and he lives at home with his
Mm.
mother before or occasionally sometimes he goes out in the world like these stories of him going to the beanstalk whatever. But then there's stories that involve him at home and his mother kind of gets a bit annoyed with him a lot of the times because he's a bit lazy, because he's a bit stupid. A lot of the time the reason that he ends up going out on these adventures is she sort of is the one who prompts him to, because she's, you know what, if you're not going to help, then you might as well go, do this or do that. So even like the story of Jack and the Beanstalk, he goes because originally he sells a cow for beans, which was very dumb of him, and
It's
and his
red
mother is
gold.
furious about it. Yes, exactly. So basically, yeah, when women are telling these, and they always make Jack's mother like a big character. They do her voice and they talk about, she said, "Oh, Jack," like you're as useless as a chocolate teapot or something like that. Like
That's a good
that is
phrase.
actually a phrase they say over
That's
here.
great.
Yeah,
Love that.
that's a phrase over here. So they always like they they shine a bigger light on her in her role because she, from what I can see, she's raising Jack pretty much alone, and Jack wouldn't be Jack without his mother. And the impetus, I guess, the motivation his mother gives him to go on all these adventures, whether he needs money or they need money, or she's just annoyed with him and throws him out of the house for a bit, or she says, you need to meet a girl and get married. Like, I'm over this. You're just sitting around here. I want grandkids. So there's just always like,
Sounds like my mom.
whenever right.
Same.
Yep, same. I think we've all been there,
Yep.
right? We've all got a Jack mother, right?
Yeah.
And I want to say, I guess, that maybe harkens back to just the traditions of storytelling a lot of the time being used for teaching and moral lessons for kids, right? And a lot of the time, the stories that the women tell involving Jack and his mother, it's usually his mom is trying to teach him something, teach some lesson, you're
Right.
lazy or you're stupid or you're this, and this is what you got to do to fix it.
Yeah.
Obviously not in such cruel terms these days would we want to do, but that's more or less what it was. And I think maybe it's just something naturally in us women that we feel like, there needs to be a purpose to this story. Like something needs to be gleaned from it, whether it's obviously entertainment is one thing, but there needs to be a lesson or something as well, something bigger that you can take away from it, that a child especially who can absorb that information and therefore grow and develop as a person in that way.
Yeah.
So that's what really I've noticed, and it is
That's
fascinating to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the war stories, the men love to talk about sometimes too, just like the deeply like gory details and everything. They love to talk about weapons.
What's with
Don't
that?
know what. We could get Freudian with that if we
Yeah.
want. Talk about how big his long his sword was. And, ooh.
It was huge. It was so big.
I have no idea. And he was small, but his sword was huge, and he could wield that sword.
Just be
It's
honest,
funny how
guys.
much that comes up. Yeah, I know, really.
That's
Like
so
you're not
good.
even subtle anymore.
Literally. It's about how you use it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, because a lot of them involve these heroes that are like, again, typical underdog heroes, not very big, not very strong,
Not
but
very
hey,
smart.
look what they can. Yeah, exactly. But look what they can do.
That's funny.
I always thought that was funny. And again, when they tell stories, they both men and women tell love stories, I find, but like I said, the loved ones with women I find they're a bit more romantic, a bit sweeter, whereas like in this one's the men tell, it's always, oh, there's a hero who has to save a beautiful princess, and oh, she's so beautiful, and talks about, oh, how good look, a lot of focus on the beauty, and it's all about that, and he falls in love with her the minute he sees her, and now he's willing to go do whatever has to be done, even if
Princess
it
No
means
Name.
certain death to get her. Yes, exactly. I know. Isn't that sad? I'm like, there's always a princess, but we never get to hear much about her.
Her name is
And
Princess,
it's
and she's
funny.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What else
right.
is there?
And that's all that matters.
Yeah.
What else is there? But it's funny, like I remember we had a male storyteller in my group. He's of like Russian Polish descent, and he told a story about a similar kind of story, a hero named Ivan. He's like the Jack of Slavic folklore, I guess. Saying he has to go rescue or do some sort of feat, some sort of accomplishment, rescue a kingdom, and then he will, I guess, win like a title and the princess as a prize. But when my friend was telling the version of the story, how he said, he's like, how I've heard it though, and how he interpreted it was the princess fell in love with Ivan first. And because she was a princess and Ivan was a peasant, she was educated. So she knew some things that Ivan did not know. And she is the one who told him, look, the dragon only comes out at this time, so you have to go do this. And she said, also, the dragon breathes fire, so you're going to need, etc. Like she was the one giving him all the information that he needed to accomplish the task. And it's because if you look like at the historical context of it, only somebody who was like wealth or nobility or royalty would have that kind of education to know all these things. And she's the one who first of all puts it in his head that he should do this, and then actually basically gives him all the tools and everything needed to do it. And so there it's like Princess No Name, she's really the hero of the story. Yes, he went out
Right,
and
if it
did
wasn't for her,
would
he would not have been able to do it.
Yeah.
exactly,
Women get
exactly.
shit
Like
done.
she would
They
have
gave him a list.
right,
Yeah.
right, literally a honey-do
sent-
list. This
sent him
is
to
what
the
you do.
store.
This is what you don't. Yep, exactly. But in a lot of these stories, they're motivated by they have some sort of sentimental feelings
Yeah.
for the hero, and therefore they're going to help them. And without that help, they would not have been able to accomplish anything that they did.
So interesting.
Wow.
Love it. It's like how
Yeah,
I feel with the
absolutely.
male Instacart shopper. I'm like, I need to give you very specific instructions.
Here are the photos.
Yeah, this is what a banana
Yeah.
looks like. I'm not even kidding. The amount of times they've messed up getting me bananas is
A
ridiculous.
banana.
I'm not
Here's
even
a plantain.
kidding. I order it for work and it's like, that's not a banana. What? It's fine. We don't have to talk about it. Anyway.
No, I'm like, so that is fascinating to
I
me
feel
because
like
I
it's so
say whatever,
okay.
like, he's going to hate me for this. Whenever Jack goes to the store and I say, do you need anything? And I'm like, I do, but you're going to get the wrong thing if I
Like, not
I
from
will
you.
go myself.
That's true. Like, what? I gave him so much crap the other day because I wanted Oreos. Like, Oreo. You know what Oreo? Everybody knows what Oreo
Oreo.
is. And he goes, and I'm like, he knows I love Oreos, like the chocolate. And then he comes back with these golden, they're not even chocolate and
Not
cream.
the
they're
golden
golden.
The golden
Yeah. And I was
ones.
like, what is this? And he was like, they're Oreos. I'm like,
But they're
when
not.
someone asks for an
You know what I
Oreo,
mean.
is that what you think
But
in your
they're
head?
not.
That is so disappointing. I'm so
No,
sorry.
I was so upset, and I was like, "He's no, but it's the same brand." I'm like, "Oh my god, okay, that's the last time I ask anything."
Literally.
Yeah.
Get
Send
my
me at the
own
store, you want
Oreos.
something.
I know. I was like, God, it's or even we've been together all these years, and like he goes, he knows like the type of wine. He knows I like rosé wine, right? But when I try to tell him the types, I'm like, okay, there's like white Zinfandel, there's this, and like still sometimes it ends up being a thing. Like he gets the one I don't like, and I don't want to be that person, so I'm just like, okay, it's
No.
fine. It's rosé.
I'll look up like very specific photos and send it, and I'm like, this is.
Oh yeah,
what
I do that
need.
too. I have a whole like saved thing of like brands in here that now I'm like, right, here it is. Here's the type, here's the
Woof.
brand name, here's all of it.
Love.
Yeah, what do you like in a rosé? Since we're also a wine podcast.
Oh, we're
yeah.
also right at a rosé. So yeah, like obviously, I saw the wine in the background there. and No, it's a little early for you guys, but you know, no judgment.
Just wanted to crack open one, but
So yeah, I'm all about. I like rosé, but I don't like a too sweet rosé,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. Like
Us
that's
too.
the problem.
Mhm.
You know, he gets me like the really sweet ones that are like all sugar, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
need like a little bit of like fruitiness to it,
Yeah.
but I like a good like dry like Zinfandel, you know, or like a Pinot rosé, sometimes like a Pinot blush.
yeah.
Pinot blush
yeah.
is probably my favorite.
Whenever we go out and get rosé, we're always like, okay, so what's the driest
Yeah.
one you have?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why when even the wrong one, I'm like, well, I'm gonna drink it because we paid for it.
Literally. So you're like, I feel the headache already. Like, it's
Literally.
already
And exactly. I know. Oh God. Yeah. Like the really cheap, like sweet. And I went to college in the U.S. I drank Frosnia from a box, but those days are long
here.
over.
It was
I am
box
over 30
high
now.
end back then.
Yes. Right. Exactly. I cannot slap the bag anymore. I can.
Those days are behind
Um,
us.
Yes. Once I turned 30, it was just all like downhill. I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
like,
Sure.
or
like once I
even
turned
dry red.
25, I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Even that.
Oh God.
Going back to your tribe, if I remember correctly, you studied under like the head storyteller, right? Or did I make that up?
Yeah, I spent a lot. No, you didn't make
Okay.
that up. You're not telling stories. No. So there, within our like my tribal community, we have like a cacique is a chief, a kutu is a grandmother,
Mm.
but it doesn't mean like literally it's any elderly woman basically, or any woman of
Like an
anybody. I
auntie?
guess I say any. Yes,
In some
it could be an
cultures,
auntie.
yeah.
It could be
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Auntie. Yeah, I have a lot of so like in the greater Native communities for older women, you'd call them any older woman is an auntie,
Mm.
any older man is an uncle, and for the elderly ones, their grandmothers,
Mhm.
grandfathers, etc.
Sure.
And everyone's like a sister or a cousin too
Aw.
sometimes. But with Taino specifically, we have akutus who are grandmothers and who have like certain status because of that. They are considered very wise. They're considered you go to them with a lot of domestic and familial related issues as well. They a lot of the times are helping with children, small children, helping mothers, helping young mothers. And then we have tequina is the word for us who are kind of like the storytellers or like the ones who relay knowledge in that way. So we had like two in my group, one who I spent a lot more time with, and he was also a healer in a way. He knew some of the traditional medicine as well. And that kind of can be woven into a taquina as well because they're basically like they're what it really literally translates to is like keeper of knowledge. So be that stories or be it like healing, traditional medicine,
Wow.
etc. It's basically like anybody who is a keeper of important knowledge, history, medicine, this or that. Obviously varies to between tribes, between clans, between groups, but they just know things. They drink and they know things. Like us, right?
Yeah.
Like, so they just know things, like all sorts of things. And it was interesting for because the one in my clan, he was a man, an older man, and I had mainly only been used to like kind of female storytellers in my own family at that point. So it was definitely sort of like a new perspective to be able to hear like his knowledge passed as an older male Takina, which isn't again, it's not particularly unusual. It was just for me, from where I was particularly coming, unusual. When you find out like the history of why he was that, it was because he had a lot of children and a lot of grandchildren, and he had been injured quite young when he was a soldier and had been injured in the line of duty in battle,
Wow.
and had to kind of retire early, like was put on disability at a relatively young age, like in his 30s or so.
Wow.
Was not able to work again. Really, I mean, like not any kind of not able to go out and work
Yeah.
really. So because of that, he was forced to, spend a lot of time at home, so much time with his children and then eventually grandchildren and other relatives and things like that. I feel like that is what sort of sprouted him to really go in that direction because he was witnessing everything going on around him from like the sphere of the domestic life, and then he always had the people coming to him because again he was, because of his disability, he was a bit more housebound, but he was always getting people coming in and coming through. And I think he really liked that too, is like whenever people would come to visit, it was almost like they were expecting something in return, even if it was just like a story that, they were coming for some sort of like entertainment. So
Yeah.
they'd come over, they'd visit, he'd put out like some food and drink maybe, and then he'd talk, and he became like one of those just like colorful characters that everybody in the community started like knowing about and wanting to come and listen to his
Yeah.
stories. And they started as just his like war stories and his own history, everything like that. He was Puerto Rican, so he was talking about like the Borican like army back in Puerto Rico, etc. But then he used that, and he knew about obviously through his own family, knowing of his Taino and indigenous heritage, he was using the sort of that same platform to also talk about our tribal history and our tribal stories and cultural history, and was telling that in the same, pretty much in the same platform as well as his own personal stories, and everybody listens just as much. So he really I find he had an interesting way of coming about it, and now, and he's so entertaining when he does it. He's
Mm.
really just like that funny little old man who like is just such a character, and he's eccentric, and when he like tells the stories he like likes to do voices and stuff, and he likes to kind of adapt it even to the audience, and he's so entertaining, and you can tell he's loving it as he's doing it. So he really is like one of my favorite people. I just love hearing like
That's so
what he
awesome.
What
yeah.
are the best ingredients for a storyteller to have? Like, are there things and qualities that make a good storyteller, or is it fluid?
I think it varies from culture to culture, and it varies from the type of story, obviously genre. I'm not sure if it's like uniform, but obviously a storyteller needs to be entertaining, right? The story itself needs to be entertaining. It's got to be like good content, but the person telling it needs to be engaging, right? You need to be able to connect with, to relate to your audience. And that's why a lot of oral storytellers, or like even myself, maybe have a theatrical background, which I do. I studied drama at NYU for a year,
So
and then I
cool.
So cool.
yeah, and then when I graduated, I had a double major, technically anthropology and theater.
Wow.
So that was I did acting for fun basically. Thought I'd make a career out of it one day, but then I realized that was far too hard. So I I kept up with it for fun though, and really enjoyed it. And I think that has really helped me in this regard, because that is what actors are essentially at the end of the day.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they are storytellers, but not just them. Obviously, everybody who writes the play or writes the script,
Right.
everybody who's involved in any kind of entertainment production to that regard. They are all storytellers in
Mhm.
different ways, one way or another. And oral storytelling is kind of just, we're pretty much all those in one, right? And so it's sort of like, it's a much harder job, you know, because
It really is a
we have to,
performance
Yeah.
in a
yes,
way.
exactly. We have to perform and we have to relay the script. And if we want to tell an original story, then we have to write the script. Like you're literally everything. Whereas like now with a movie or a play or a show, you have a whole crew doing all that and all these people involved. Most people just see the actors, but then you got to remember all that's going behind that.
Right.
And the actors, obviously, yeah, they play a very important role. They're the ones literally bringing it to life and they are telling it. But when you're a storyteller, you have to like also, first of all, remember your story and why you're telling it and make it so that it is engaging and connect and can really connect to the people that you're with. And that can, whereas like a play and a movie is the same script every time, it can really change. Like I have told the same story completely different ways
Wow.
many times, depending on who is the audience, even depending on the times and if something maybe recently just happened in the world that's big and impactful for a lot of us. So that's, I think, what's different about storytelling in comparison to other media is that it's not static, right? It's organic. It
Right.
changes, it moves, and it will never be the same twice.
Right.
Because every person who tells it, even the same person who tells it, like even me, if I tell the same story, it will never come out exactly the same.
Yeah.
No matter what I do, even if I memorize it, like, because some people say, oh, you should have some uniformity, and you should. You got to keep like the main elements consistent, but for it to be the same every time, then it becomes more a script that you're just
Yeah.
reading as opposed to you actively being involved in it.
I feel like it would
And
become a little
you,
more stagnant, whereas it's a little more
yeah, it is.
alive
That's the thing.
when you do make that decision based on the audience or whoever you're talking to and stuff like that.
Right. And that's one of the things I guess I really love about it and what makes it so unique.
So how has transitioning to a podcast format affected your storytelling if it's now just you
It
and a
is
microphone?
it is so different for me because again, like I've literally just spent all this time talking about like I play off the audience and I play off
Right.
what I'm seeing and hearing and observing in my surroundings, and now I'm just sitting alone at a microphone and I'm just like, okay, so now it does feel a bit more scripted, right? It has
Yeah.
to be.
Right,
Like
yeah.
I mean, or I could just sit there and kind of ramble, but like then
We do that
again, I'm
sometimes.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when there's another person there, you can,
It's
Yeah.
right?
easy.
Like
You
Yeah.
can
when
play
if
off
there's
each other
somebody,
and things
yeah,
like that.
Mhm.
exactly. But when it's you alone,
Yeah.
you're just like, all right, what do I do here? I got to be engaging. I don't know who's listening. I don't know what they're thinking or what they're feeling
Mhm.
Yeah.
or why they're listening. So I got to
'Cause you're
just go
cool.
with, thank you. But yeah, so that was, and I got to tell you, it was uncomfortable at first.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you, again, because you guys do it as a group podcast,
Mhm.
but when it's just you alone there and you're like, right, do people really just want to sit and hear me talk, listen to me talk for like 15 minutes? Like,
Yeah.
it's pressure, right? You feel so much pressure on you to, okay, I got to make this good. And it really, you feel very called out and like it's all on you and all eyes on you and nobody else is there to help you with this. You can't like, there's no audience who can
Yeah.
laugh at something,
Yeah.
even just
Literally.
awkwardly, or a sympathy laugh or something if a joke doesn't land. Like, so I'm just like, okay, it was difficult. And when I first did it, like my first two episodes or so, I was listening to myself and we're always critical. I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
sound like this is so like, is anybody really interested in it? Like this, it's just me. And I wrote what I read, obviously, and I'm still trying to make it sound like kind of natural and organic as I'm talking, like I would be having a conversation. But you can tell it's been like pre-written, and I'm
Sure.
reading off a script, etc. Um, and I was like, does that like, or is that what people like? Are people into that? Is that what people want to hear? To me, it felt like awkward, and I didn't like it. At least I didn't like listening to me. but,
It doesn't come across as
but
awkward if that
No.
makes
Yeah.
you feel.
okay, good.
You think it's
I'm glad to
engaging,
hear
it's
that.
exciting, like you have a
I'm glad to
pleasing
hear that.
voice.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
But then, like, people who had listened were like, actually, we really liked it, and it was interesting, and we'd like to hear more. And it was like a good amount of time, because that's why I was saying, I'm like, oh, am I droning too much? Am I going on it? So I try to keep them like short. I try to keep,
Yeah.
have been
Yeah.
trying to keep episodes around 15 minutes, because let's be honest, like when people engage with things nowadays, especially digitally, you don't want to have to sit and listen through a lot.
Yep.
Yeah.
Even like when someone sends you a video, I'm like, oh, what, 5 minutes? Like, you gotta
Yeah.
watch this whole thing. Like,
So
just
true.
show me the entertaining bit. So, but yeah, that's how we, for better or for worse, that's how we've become as a culture. We want our information quickly and now. In fact, like we don't want to have to
Yeah.
like wade through a lot of BS for it. So I try to keep it as succinct as I can. And like I said, like I always say, anybody who I've given the names, you want to go do your own research. Everybody's capable of doing that. We know everybody knows how to use Google now, but I try to keep it like to the more entertaining parts, and keep it to the things that are kind of essential
Yeah.
to get the story across, without being to like having to, it's always important to establish some sort of historical and cultural context.
Totally.
But I try not to go too into that. Back in the 16th century,
I don't know, I like
approximately
that.
this. So like,
I love that stuff.
okay, fair enough. Some people do,
No,
and like
yeah.
I said, I think
Yeah.
it's important. But some people are like, they're
Just
like,
want the
oh,
overview
history,
of it,
date.
kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Do you think with the rise of the clickbaity social media world that we're losing the art of storytelling?
I mean, it's definitely changed. Yeah, like obviously that's why I was saying like everybody wants information fast and immediate,
Yeah.
and they only want like the most entertaining parts,
Yeah.
really, without.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, show me the video. When does the person get hurt? Let's see like like
Yeah.
let's see, or when
Show me
does
the most
the funny
important
thing
15
happen?
seconds.
Yes, exactly. When's it gonna happen? When's the animal gonna do something cute or funny? And like, so I mean, and yeah, I think in some regard, yeah, you lose a lot of context for it, especially in native storytelling. Like what's important for us is we always start every story with, I'll tell you how it was told to me, because obviously every story we tell is something we've heard from somebody else, and then they've heard it from someone else, and etc. And you go back as far as you can. So I'll say, I'll tell you how it was told to me by my grandmother, who heard it from her grandmother, who heard it from her, and obviously
Oh,
I
I
can only go
love
back so
that.
far, but it puts it in, you frame it in that way, and it puts it in the context, and it also acknowledges that this story wouldn't be here without the people who told told the story before you. And that is really how a story keeps its power
Yeah.
in a lot of native storytelling traditions. And even when you finish it, to kind of re-acknowledge it at the end, and that's how it was told to me. And another thing a lot of the time they say is all my relations at the end of a story, because that's again a reaffirmation of the connection that you have to everybody who told that story
Yeah.
before you, be it family, be it friends, be it, you are all connected by sharing that story now. So that when we say relations, that's what it means. Like we are all connected in that way.
Right.
And so, yeah, I always try to do that. And I hope that when people hear those types of stories, and if they do pass it on, and if they're trying to pass it on in the traditional way, that is how you would do it. And I think with, like you said, with the digital era, with clickbait and everything, obviously you completely lose that, right? You completely lose any context. And maybe again, because I'm nosy or whatever, when I do see certain videos, or I read I see an article or something with a title that is engaging, I do want to know more about like the person and the people and the background. I'm like, wait, how did this happen, and why, and
Yeah.
who, and like where was this in the world? And also, I think, like you said, it can be kind of damaging, these clickbait things, because like when we see something out of context, people are really quick to judge, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like you see an article of like, oh, somebody did something scandalous, and you're like, oh my God, what a horrible person or whatever, and you don't know really what led to it or why
Yeah.
or their background or anything. And yeah, so I think in that sense, I mean, it's not really related to storytelling, but I think it's just damaging to us as people, and like showing some sense of humanity towards others, and like
Definitely.
being empathetic and sympathetic, right?
Yeah, we
like
could
we're
use a
so
bit
quick
more
to
of
judge
that.
what we see.
Yeah.
I think, like what you said,
Absolutely.
like the more complexity that a story contains, the more we learn that the humans around us have complexity. And I think when you boil
Right.
everything down to these short things, what we are internalizing slowly and surely is that people are simple, things are either good or bad, like skipping to
Right. A
the
very
heightened
shallow
part.
viewpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
You
a
could-
great way to put that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We
Mhm.
start looking at each other, like you said, in very like kind of black and white, good or bad, shallow terms.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's ever good. Like we
Mm-mm.
should be always trying to see the connection and the humanity in each other and making those connections.
Yeah.
And that's why we love lore. We love storytelling.
Exactly.
And we
Right.
love having you on. I feel like we have taken up so much of your time.
No, I have
Thank
been,
you.
this has been amazing. Like I said, this is like whenever I would be listening to you guys, I'm like, oh, this is how I used to like spend my time. And I
Well, you're always
miss
welcome
having,
back.
like,
Yeah,
Indeed.
thank
we
you
can
so
chat
much.
anytime.
Yeah.
Yes.
Monstress is out anywhere, I believe. Spotify.
Pretty much, yeah.
Pod.
Spotify, Apple, and Amazon are the main ones I find people listening on. But it's free.
Amazing.
You don't have to subscribe. Content's available to anybody. Also, obviously, this podcast is amazing, and I have had just the best time here talking to you all and connecting on this level that I don't get to with everybody every day all the time, especially
It really feels special.
even over here, like
Yeah.
I said. It does, yeah.
Where can people find you on socials?
Yeah, so I am on Insta at Asihakuya, which is my tribal name, translates roughly to laughing star.
Oh.
Asihacuya. So there I am on Insta. Monstress also has an Instagram. It's at Monstress0912. And then on Facebook, Natalie Huber Rodriguez. There's no other person with that name. I am certain of it.
Okay, unique.
So, yes, exactly. I know. That's why my double-barreled name, pain in the asses, has been all my life. It's at least people know where to find me.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yep, and Monstress has a page as well on Facebook. It's just Monstress, same thing. Oh, by the way, spelled STRESS,
Yes.
as opposed to OUS, part of the pun. And yeah, so those I'm always usually easily accessible on those, and people are free to follow, like, subscribe, or even just listen and comment as well. Again, I always say with the podcast especially, I'm like, everybody please feel free to comment, give me feedback, because as a storyteller, I'm relying on that, and I can't hear it
You
because I can't hear you when I'm doing it. So thank you guys so much. I have really loved this. This has been amazing.
We
and
have as well.
Yeah, I am happy.
Thank you, Natalie.
Happy to talk anytime. Yeah, of course. And just, I don't know if you noticed, but what I'm wearing, just to get back to feminists and women and everything, is we wear red for our sisters in the Indigenous community, Indigenous people worldwide. I don't know how familiar you guys are with this, but women are very at risk, more so than kind of any other ethnicity, to suffer any sort of physical and sexual violence.
It's horrifying.
Yeah, missing and murdered Indigenous women, or MMIW, is the cause, and it's a very big kind of public health crisis for Indigenous communities. So I always like to shine a light on, remember, the women are sacred. We are, like I said, we are the culture keepers, we are the teachers, so the first ones in many cases. And so I always just like to acknowledge, like, we need to remember, particularly, obviously, all women. We all kind of are more vulnerable in that sense, but Indigenous women in particular are particularly vulnerable. And I just like to remind everyone, women are sacred and should be protected and valued worldwide. But Indigenous women especially need some help and some protection these days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you can donate.
Yes.
It's a good,
yes,
great cause.
absolutely. Or even just learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Learn.
Yeah.
On top of that. Well, thank
Thank
you.
you for sharing that.
So-
I like that shirt too. Well, thank you.
Thank you guys. It's been an honor, such an honor to be here and meet all of you. And yes, please come to Scotland sometime.
Yes. Oh, we will.
You know what? We will.
Yep.
Booking flight
We'll fly
now.
a flight right now.
Please.
Yeah.
Yes, please come. You can meet Jack in person
Yes.
and see. No,
We'll come with
please, really
Oreos in
need you.
hand.
Yes.
This is
Oh,
what they
God,
look
yes.
like.
Right, here you go now. Lesson learned.
Amazing.
It is such an honor to be able to talk to you. I think you have so much wisdom, and also it is, like
Thank
you
you.
said, likewise, having a conversation this deep and meaningful is not something you can easily do out in the world.
Yeah.
So thanks for being part of
Absolutely.
it.
Truly.
Of course.
Would you like to sing with us?
Oh, boy. Okay,
It's going to be perfect.
Would you like to count us down, Natalie?
okay. 1, 2, 3.
Perfect. No, no.
Incredible.
Perfect
That's that
harmony.
NYU theater coming in. I hear it.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. I missed my calling.